How's it going there, YouTube? We're back here with round 2 of the Legacy 1K that happened this Halloween weekend. Today, we have Applejacks on player 1, piloted by Connors, and on player 2 side, we have Dan piloting Saga Depths, also known as Golgari Depths, or Turbo Depths, however you want to call it. So Connors is piloting Applejacks, uh, a very traditional deck in Legacy. It's been around for quite a long time, and it's centered around the creature Orcish Lumberjack, where it has the ability to tap to sacrifice a forest, and you can generate either 3 red or 3 green. So this is generally used to turbo out something like Titania, which where you can benefit a lot by sacrificing your lands to make 5/3 elementals. And traditionally, it used to go for cards like Natural Order, where you can sacrifice a creature and you can find another green creature, and it has a suite of utility creatures. So before, it used to be like Knight of the Reliquary and Primeval Titan and Titania and stuff like that. But now I think Connors is playing an updated list where it doesn't really natural order anymore. It kind of just accelerates into either the Titania or the new Minskin Boo and kind of stuff like that. I think he is also running some copies of the Warhammer card Moloch, where it's a creature that has a removal spell on it where it enters with X counters and then it fights something. So that's Applejacks. He's typically running like a. It does have the benefits of crop rotation and the land package where he can go for Dark Depths Thespian Stage combos if he wants to, but it is not the primary focus. There's only like one copy of each of those cards. So he's playing a way more grindy and mid-rangey, or he has the ability to play the grind and the mid-range strategy, but Orcish Lumberjack really accelerates because it's essentially sacking a land or turning a land into a Black Lotus. Dan, on the other hand, playing Saga Depths, Turbo Depths, whatever you want to call it, basically it is trying to push out Merit Lodge as quickly as possible. So we're going to start the game here. Connors went first with just a Bajuka Bog and then passing the turn. And Dan is responding by playing a Bayou into Thoughtseize, just making sure that the coast is clear. So typically, the best hand for Saga Depths is most likely Dark Depths, and then turn to Urborg, and then into a Vampire Hexmage. Activate that Vampire Hexmage, removing all of the counters off the Dark Depths, and immediately sacrificing it for a Merit Lodge. That's usually its best opener. Don't have that fast of a start if we are starting with a Bayou. So here, Connors is going into his turn 2, just fetching into a Life from the Loam, and then casting the Life from the Loam to get back the Windswept Heath. Passing back to Dan. Dan's gonna respond with an Elvish Reclaimer for the turn, and then pass it straight back to Connors, taking really fast turns here at the beginning of the round. Connors gonna draw for turn, play the Windswept Heath that he got back from the Life from the Loam, play the Mox Diamond, discarding Sejiri Step, cracking the Windswept Heath, and we're turboing out a turn 3 Minskin Boo. Finds a Taiga off of the Windswept Heath so that he can. He didn't really need the red mana, but always good to diversify the lands here. So Boo's gonna come in. Connor's gonna uptick the Minskin Boo, put 3 counters on it, and we're probably gonna swing in for 4 and bring Dan down to 14. So that'll leave Connors with 1 card in hand. Dan's gonna draw for turn. It is a Verdant Catacombs, and he's just gonna put it straight onto the battlefield. Looks like he has 2 crop rotations in hand at least. Looks like there's also a Sylvan Library. I think that's the white border card. But can't tell what the other 3 cards are. So Dan just going to finish with the Verdant Catacombs and pass back to Connors. Connors going to play a Windswept Heath. I think it's safe to just uptick the Minsk again and then just swing for 7 with the Boo. Put him on a 1 turn clock. Ooh, gonna swing in for the 7. Dan gonna take it. And then down comes Knight of the Reliquary for Connors. So this, it's hard to tell that this is Applejacks, but it is looking like Naya Depths. Hopefully we get to see some of the spice from the Lumberjack. Looks like at the end of Connor's turn, Dan is going to crack the Verdant Catacombs, search for another Bayou, and then proceed to his turn. Is he going to activate the Elvish Reclaimer is the question. Even if he does activate the Elvish Reclaimer, I'm not exactly sure what the best target would be to get. Saga is a little slow against the Minsk and Boo. Unless he has a Thespian stage, Dark Depths isn't the greatest. And then vice versa as well. Looks like there is an Abrupt Decay in his hand, so he could be opting to Abrupt Decay probably the Boo. Unless he has another way of dealing with the Boo. Knight of the Reliquary. Well, it doesn't matter. If he Abrupt Decays the Boo, he's just going to get another one at the beginning of the upkeep, so it actually might be the Knight of the Reliquary. Looks like we've reached the same conclusion. The Knight just came in, so it cannot give itself protection. Okay, Dan is going to proceed to his turn. And it looks like he drew another Elvish Reclaimer, and it's not going to be enough. So that is a quick win for Applejacks and the Minsk and Boo. Let's see if Dan can bring it back in Game 2. Alrighty, we are here for Game 2 for the Round 2 of the Legacy 1K. So Connors on Applejacks took Game 1. So that means Dan will be taking the play. And I think we are just going straight into the game. There's the Urborg. And is this going to be Hand Disruption? Turn 1 Thoughtseize or Duress? Most likely going to be a Thoughtseize. Oh, there's a Nile Spellbomb. Connors top decks a Sylvan Library. So are we going to see the dream play of Dark Depths on turn 2 into Vampire Hexmage from the Urborg? There is the Orcish Lumberjack. I believe it is a 1-mana 1/2. I'm not 100% sure on the stats. There is Dark Depths into Vampire Hexmage. So this is exactly what Golgari Depths wants to be seeing. Yep, no debate. Just gonna sacrifice the Vampire Hexmage and target the Dark Depths to remove all of the ice counters from it. That will trigger the Dark Depths and then sacrificing itself to make a Merit Lodge. So Connors needs to find a answer here. Otherwise, he is dead. There is Caracas, and I believe it is off the top of the library. And that is going to put a stop to Dan's strategy. Hopefully, he has things off of his opening hand to continue playing the game. Hopefully, it wasn't all in on that turn 2 win. Or turn 3 win. I think there is a Life from the Loam in his hand. The Verdant Catacombs. So this might be where the deck kind of struggles if... Ooh, there's a Retrofitter Foundry. It might take a few turns for him to get something started, though. Retrofitter evolving a servo all the way up to a construct does take quite a long time. And I don't think... If this is Dan's strategy, I don't think he'll have enough time before Connors starts setting something up with this Orcish Lumberjack. So if there's a Titania. So 2 mana from the Plateau and then the Taiga. And then Orcish Lumberjack sacrifices Taiga for 3 more mana. That's 5 mana in total for a Titania Priest or Protector of Argoth. Dan gonna fetch from his Verdant Catacombs in response to casting the Titania. There's a Bayou going to activate the Nile Spellbomb, exiling Connor's Graveyard. So he did all of this in response to the Titania because when Titania enters the battlefield, its controller may take any land from the graveyard and then put it onto the battlefield. So this stops Connors from getting an extra land. So pretty good Nile Spellbomb here. However, Dan's now facing down a 5/3, and any one of Connor's fetch lands, or even just an activation off the Orcish Lumberjack, will start generating massive amounts of power. Because because of the Titania, every time a land is put into the graveyard, he generates a 5/3 elemental. Dan gonna play Verdant Catacombs and crack it. Does he have an answer to the Titania? So something big here is Dan is not. Oh, there's an Abrupt Decay. Is it on the Orcish Lumberjack? It's the only target other than Retrofitter Foundry. And down comes Elvish Reclaimer. So what I was saying before was Dan is not going for the Life from the Loam plays just because even if he gets his Dark Depths back and he has a way of making another Merit Lodge, he still needs a way to deal with the Caracas. So getting down this Elvish Reclaimer is pretty important because you can sack it to try and get an Urza Saga, and hopefully you can kind of survive long enough to cycle through the Urza Saga to get a Pithing Needle, and then the Pithing Needle can name the Caracas. But then again, it's there's a reason why the deck is called Turbo Depths. It really wants to be getting down a Merit Lodge extremely quickly, which Dan did. It was just unfortunate that Connor's top decked the Caracas. Titania coming in for 5, and Dan opts to block with the Elvish Reclaimer, trying to take. So he does trade up. So the Elvish Reclaimer was a 3/4, and the Titania is a 5/3. So he gets rid of the immediate threat, but he throws away a way to deal with the Caracas. I don't believe there's a way to grow the Titania. Maybe Dan's thinking was that he needs to deal with it before he puts another 5/3 onto the battlefield. But it was a weird swing from Connors. Like, I'm not sure why he would swing with the Titania. There's a Life from the Loam from Dan, getting back 2 Verdant Catacombs and a Dark Depths. Those are like the only lands that he has in his graveyard. Maybe this is maybe he's thinking um this is another way of finding the Urza Saga now that the Elvish Reclaimer is gone. Sylvan Library, Connor's gonna draw 3 cards, put maybe 2 back. But Connor's at a healthy 19. You could take 4, you can take 8. I think he's in quite a dominant position. I don't think he's too worried about the Retrofitter Foundry. There's a Flagstones in Connor's hand. Looks like he's contemplating just taking the 1 card. Oh, he takes 2, so he'll go down to 15. So he takes Knight of the Reliquary and Windswept Teeth off of the Sylvan Library. Very interesting choice. Knight of the Relic, or not Knight of the Reliquary, sorry. I think it's Knight of Autumn. It's when it enters the battlefield, you can select one of 3 modes. I think it's like put 2 +1/+1 counters on something, destroy artifact or enchantment, and then gain some life. I think those are the options. But Connor's gonna play a Windswept Teeth, crack it for a Savannah, and then tapping out for a Minskin Boo. The all-star of the game so far. It's a very hard threat to deal with. You need 2 removal spells, one for the Minskin Boo, one for the Boo. So uptick the Minsk, make Boo a 4/4 Trample Haster, swing for 4, bring Dan down to 12. At the end of the turn, Dan's gonna tap 2 mana to make a servo from this Retrofitter Foundry. Alright, Dan's gonna untap and draw for the turn. So we know that there's 2 Verdant Catacombs and a Dark Depths in Dan's hand. There's one of the Verdant Catacombs that he fetched back with the Life from the Loam. And he doesn't necessarily need to crack it because of the Urborg. Using the servo to attack Connors directly. And then choosing to do nothing. I wonder what's in Dan's hand. So going to the upkeep, he's triggering the Minskin Boo and just seeing if Dan has anything to do. This is the Sylvan Library. Looks like there's a Knight of the Reliquary. Swords to Plowshares, and it might be a Maze of Ith. Don't think it's a Maze of Ith. Does look like a Time Spiral remastered or a... Well, it doesn't matter what it is staying on the top. There's an Assassin's Trophy from Dan on the Minsk and Boo. So this is after the draw, but before the main phase. So Connors is gonna be able to search for a basic land. Puts it onto the battlefield untapped. So Connors did take 2 cards, so that's where the -4 came from. That just happened there. But it looks like there's a Primeval Titan in his hand. There's a Flagstones of Trocaire. Looks like he's going to combat. It's Primeval Titan, Knight of the Reliquary, Knight of Autumn, Swords to Plowshares, and Boseiju Who Endures. That is the makeup of Connor's hand. Boo is going to come in for 4. Dan's going to take 4, go down to 8. I think this is just going to be a Knight of the Reliquary from Connors. There she is. Gonna pass the turn. Dan gonna tap 2 mana to make another servo. So the Knight of the Reliquary looks like it is only a 3/3 at the moment. Looks like there's only a Windswept Heath. I think it's Orcish Lumberjack, Titania, Windswept Heath, and Minsk and Boo in Connor's graveyard. I don't know if making a servo was the right call. Maybe evolving it up to a Thopter so that he can make a 4/4 construct might be a better play, so that he can either block the Boo or try to favorably block the Knight before it gets out of hand, but Connors would most likely not attack with the Knight. There's a Vampire Hexmage from Dan. Surprised he's not Life from the Loaming. I think he's just trying to draw cards to find answers to these 2 threats that Connors has. But if he just drew the Vampire Hexmage, which I assume that he did, otherwise he would have played a last turn. If you had this, you have a Dark Depths in hand, you just need to find a way to deal with the Caracas. I guess another thing is if you Life from the Loam and you have a Pithing Needle in the main board, you don't want to dredge it away or accidentally mill it. I think you could have taken the 5 damage from the Titania earlier and really relied on Elvish Reclaimer finding an Urza Saga to deal with this Caracas. Tapping 5 mana for another Titania. Gonna bring back a Windswept Heath. That'll immediately make a 5/3 if needed. To combat attacking with just the Boo. So we can use Knight of the Reliquary here for some extra utility. Dan goes down to 4. Makes another servo. Draws for turn. It's really hard to tell what's in his hand, but we know for sure that he has a Dark Depths and another Verdant Catacombs from when he Life from the Loamed. There's the Verdant Catacombs. And Dan just passing the turn back. Connor's gonna activate the Windswept Heath, sacrifice it, trigger the Titania, make a 5/3 elemental. Gonna search for a forest or a plains. And then Knight of the Reliquary, most likely gonna sack one of the lands. Probably like the plains or sacks the Savannah. Not a problem. So this game is pretty much over. Like on Connor's turn, he could be like really tricky, but he has so much power on board. Looks like he's debating on getting a Wasteland. If he gets a Wasteland, he can Wasteland his own Flagstones of Trocaire, get 2 more elementals, because he sacrifices the Wasteland to get 1, then he blows up his land to get another 1. So he'll have 4 5/3s. And there's just so many lands in the graveyard. I think that the Knight of the Reliquary is now a 6/6. So if Dan puts all of the servos and the Vampire Hexmage in front of each of the elementals, he still has more than enough power, or Connors has more than enough power to just break through. So that will be the game. Applejacks will take it over Turbo Saga Depths in 2 games. It was a crazy top deck with the Caracas. It set Dan just so far behind. I think he needed to just be really aggressive with the Elvish Reclaimer. I think the Applejacks deck, because of all of the utility, like it is a Green Sun Zenith deck, has so many utility creatures. I think you can just try to outrace it because you're also the combo deck. I don't think the green white or the green black Saga Depths, the Turbo Depths, I don't think it's geared to try and play the control game. So keeping the Elvish Reclaimer to just kind of keep trying to make merit lodges was probably the correct decision. Because there's no way you're gonna outgrind the fair Knight of the Reliquary deck. Dan just doing some math here, trying to do the best blockers that he can for the camera. Knight of the Autumn came down and shattered the Retrofitter Foundry. Dan made a last-ditch servo. I mean, he did have a way to make a servo into a construct, but again, it's just there's so much power on board. No matter how Dan blocked or whatever he made, there's just not going to be enough. And there's the handshake. So Applejacks takes it over Saga Depths in 2. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. I really wish that Applejacks really got to pop off with the Orcish Lumberjack, but there was a crazy top deck Caracas. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. We'll see you next time.